The Iliad, Book 16, Patroclus fights and dies. Historical background. Modern historians generally agree that the Iliad reflects a set of historical events, but disagree about the relationship of the Iliad to those events. Most historians accept that at some point around 1250 to 1200 BC, the city of Troy was destroyed by a raiding party from the Greek mainland. Most also believe that the poem, while probably wrong in most of its historical details, reflects some historical realities from the late Bronze Age and Dark Ages, which are consistent with the archaeological record. Book 16. The Greeks go to war against the Trojans after the Trojans kidnap a Greek princess. Patroclus begs Achilles, a Greek hero, to send him back to war. Achilles agrees but sets conditions. Patroclus is not happy with the conditions set for him. While the men kept on fighting at the well-decked ships, Patroclus went to Achilles, his people's shepherd, shedding warm tears like a fountain of dark water whose stream flows over the lip of a sheer rock face. Looking at him, swift-footed, godlike Achilles felt pity. So he spoke to him. His words had wings. "Why are you crying, Patroclus, like some girl, an infant walking beside her mother, asking to be picked up?" She pulls the robe and stops her mother strolling on ahead, looking up at her tears, until the mother lifts her up. "You're crying just like that girl, Patroclus. Is there something you need to say to the Myrmidons or me? Some news that only you have heard?" With a heavy sigh, horseman Patroclus, you then replied, "Achilles, Peleus' son, by far the strongest of the Achaeans, don't be angry with me. Such great despair has overcome the Argives. For all those who used to be the bravest warriors are lying at the ships with sword and spear wounds. Powerful Diomedes, son of Tydeus, hit by a spear, famous spearman Odysseus with a stab wound, and Agamemnon too. An arrow struck Eurypylus in the thigh. Many healers, exceptionally skilled in various medicines, are with them now, tending their wounds. But it's impossible to deal with you, Achilles. I hope anger like this rage you're nursing never seizes me. It's disastrous. How will you be of use to anyone in later generations if you won't keep shameful ruin from the Argives? You're pitiless. Perhaps horseman Peleus was not your father, nor Thetis your mother. The gray sea delivered you, some tall cliff, for you've an unyielding heart. If your mind shuns some prophecy or your noble mother has told you news from Zeus, at least send me, and quickly, with the others in our troop of Myrmidons. I could be a saving light for the Danaans. Give me your armor to buckle round my shoulders, so Trojans, mistaking me for you, may stop the fight." Patroclus finished his entreaty. How wrong he was! He was praying for his own death, his dreadful fate. Swift-footed Achilles, with some heat, replied, "My dear divinely born Patroclus, what are you saying? I'm not concerned with any prophecy I know about, nor has my noble mother said a thing from Zeus. But dreadful pain came in my heart and spirit when that man wished to cheat someone his equal and steal away that prize, and just because he's got more power. That really hurt, given that I've suffered in this war so many pains here in my chest. Achaea's sons chose that girl as my prize. I won her with my spear. Once I'd destroyed her strong-walled city. Lord Agamemnon took her back, out of my hands, as if I were some stranger without honor. But let that be. It's over, done with. Besides, my spirit didn't mean to stay enraged forever. And although I thought I wouldn't end my anger until the cries of warfare reached my ships. Come, put my famous armor on your shoulders and lead war-loving Myrmidons to battle, since black clouds of Trojans now surround the ships, expecting victory. The Argives stand crammed in the seashore with little space, while a city full of Trojans comes at them without fear, because they don't see near them my helmet with its glittering front. Soon enough, they'd be running back, filling the gullies with their dead, if mighty Agamemnon treated me with kindness. But now they fight all through our camp. But there's no spear raging in the fist of Diomedes, son of Tydeus, to protect Danaans from disaster. I've not heard the voice of Agamemnon crying out in his vile head. As for Hector, that man-killer's voice echoes everywhere, shouting at Trojans, who fill all the plain with their noise as they defeat Achaeans in this battle. Even so, Patroclus, you must stave off disaster from the fleet. Go after them in force. They may fire those ships and rob us of the journey home we crave." Now pay attention to what I tell you about the goal I have in mind for you, so you'll win me great honor and rewards. So all Danaans will send back to me that lovely girl and give fine gifts as well. Once you push the Trojans from the ships, come back. If Zeus, Hera's mate, who loves his thunder, gives you the glory, don't keep on battling those war-loving Trojans with me absent. You would decrease my honors. Don't let the joy of fighting and of killing Trojans lead you on to Iliad, just in case some deathless Olympian god attacks you. Apollo, the far worker, loves his Trojans. So make sure you come back here again, once your saving light has reached our ships. O Father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo, if only no single Trojan or Achaean could escape death, and just we two alone were not destroyed, so that by ourselves we could take Troy's sacred battlements. Tell me now, you muses living on Olympus, how the fire first got tossed onto Achaean ships. It was Hector. He came up close to Ajax, then with his great sword hacked Ajax's ash spear right behind the point. He cut straight through it. So Telamonian Ajax still gripped the spear, but it was useless without its bronze spearhead, which fell some distance off, clanging on the ground. The heart and mighty Ajax recognized God's work. He shuddered, for he perceived how high thundering Zeus was denying completely all his fighting skill, wanting the Trojans to prevail. Ajax backed off, out of range. Then onto that swift ship the Trojans threw untiring fire, which spread itself immediately in a fiery blaze that no one could extinguish. The ship's stern started to catch fire. At that moment, Achilles, slapping his thighs, said to Patroclus, "Up now, divinely born Patroclus, master horseman. In the ships I see destructive flames going up. Trojans must not seize our ships and leave us with no way to escape. Put armor on, and quickly. I'll collect the soldiers." Achilles spoke. Patroclus dressed in gleaming bronze. First he fixed on his shins the beautiful leg armor, fitted with silver ankle clasps. Around his chest he put on the body armor of Achilles, swift-footed descendant of Acus, finely worked and glittering like a star. On his shoulders he then slung his bronze silver-studded sword and a large strong shield. On his powerful head he set the famous helmet with its horsehair crest. The plume on top nodded full of menace. Then Patroclus took 2 long spears well fitted to his grip. He didn't choose Achilles' spear, for no Achaean man could wield that weapon, so heavy, huge, and strong, except for brave Achilles. It was made of ash wood from the peak of Pelion. Meanwhile, Achilles went to and fro among the huts, getting all his Myrmidons to arm themselves. They rushed out like flesh-eating wolves, hearts full of unspeakable fury, beasts which in the mountains have caught and ripped apart some huge antlered stag. Then in a pack they charge off, jaws all dripping blood, to lap black surface water with their slender tongues in some dark spring, vomiting up clots of blood from their crammed bellies, while in their chests their hearts are resolute. That's how the leaders and commanders of the Myrmidons rushed around brave Patroclus, comrade of swift Achilles, Aeacus' descendant, who stood among them there, urging on the horses and the warriors carrying their shields. Achilles offers a libation and a prayer to Zeus. The armed warriors who went with brave Patroclus marched out in formation, until, with daring hearts, they charged the Trojans, immediately swarming out, like wasps beside a road, which young lads love to torment, constantly disturbing them in their roadside nest. Those fools make mischief for all sorts of people. When Trojans saw the brave son of Menoetius, with his attendant, both in glittering armor, all their hearts were shaken and their ranks fell back. They thought Peleus' swift-footed son by his ships had set aside his anger and made friends again. Each man glanced around, checking how he might escape his own complete destruction. Patroclus was the first to throw his bright spear right at the central mass, where most troops clustered, by the stern part of the ship of gray-hearted Protesilaus. He hit a man, Pyrachemes, who led Paeonian charioteers from Amdon, by the broad-flowing Axius. Struck by that spear in his right shoulder, he fell down, screaming on his back there in the dust. Comrades round him, his Paeonians ran off. Patroclus terrified them. Now he killed their leader and best fighter. The Achaeans rally and attack the Trojans. The leaders then began to kill each other in the scattered fighting. First, Menoetius' brave son with his sharp spear struck Aurelius in the thigh as he was turning. He drove the bronze straight through, breaking the bone. Aurelius fell face down in the dirt. Then warlike Menelaus hit Theus in the chest, in a place where it was open right beside his shield. The blow collapsed his limbs. Meges, Phyleus' son, saw Amphicolus charging at him, but hit him first, spearing the top of his leg where a man's muscle is the thickest. The spear point sliced his tendons and darkness closed his eyes. Then the sons of Nestor went into action. Antilochus jabbed his sharp spear at Antimnius, driving the bronze point at his side, so he fell forward. Maris, who was close by, angry about his brother, charged Antilochus, holding his spear, and then stood by his brother's body. But godlike Thrasymedes moved too quickly for him. Before Maris could thrust, he plunged out at his shoulder. He didn't miss. The spear point sheared off muscle at the bottom of his arm and broke the bone in two. Maris fell with a crash, and darkness veiled his eyes. Thus, these two, slaughtered by two brothers, went off to Erebus. They'd seen Sarpedon's brave companion, spearmen sons of Amisidorus. He'd reared the raging chimera who'd killed so many men. Ajax, son of Oileus, jumped out at Cleobulus, captured him alive, stuck in that confusion. Even so, Ajax struck him with his sword across the neck, draining his fighting strength. The sword grew warm with blood. Dark death closed up his eyes, and strong fate embraced him. Thus, these Danaan leaders each killed his man. Just as ravenous mountain wolves suddenly attack young goats or lambs and seize them from the flock, when in the mountains an inattentive shepherd lets them wander off, once the wolves see them, they attack at once, for those young lack the heart to fight. That's how Danaans then went after Trojans, whose minds now turned to shameful flight, for they'd lost their will to battle on. Hector realized the tide of victory in that fight was changing, but he stood there trying to save his loyal companions. Just as those times a cloud comes from Olympus, moving from the upper air across the sky when Zeus brings on a rainstorm, that's how Trojans fled yelling from the ships, crossing the ditch again in complete disorder. Hector's swift-footed horses carried him and his weapons back, leaving behind against their will. The Trojans held up at the trench dug by Achaeans. In that ditch, many swift horses lost their masters' chariots when poles snapped at the end. Patroclus pursues the fleeing Trojans. When Patroclus had cut the Trojans' front ranks off, he pushed them back again towards the ships, keeping them from the city they were trying to reach. Between the ships, the river, and the lofty wall in that middle ground, he kept charging at them, killing them, avenging deaths of many comrades. There he first struck Pronus with his shining spear, where Pronus' shield left his chest exposed. His limbs gave way, and he fell down with a thud. Patroclus next rushed at Thestor, son of Enops, who just sat crouching in his polished chariot, paralyzed with terror, reins slipping from his hands. Coming up, Patroclus struck him with his spear, right on the jawbone, smashing through his teeth. Patroclus pulled his spear back, dragging Thestor out across the chariot rail. Just as a man sitting on a rocky point hauls up a monstrous fish out of the sea, using a line and bright bronze hook. That's how Patroclus dragged Thestor from his chariot, mouth skewered on the shining spear. He threw him down, face first. As Thestor fell, his spirit abandoned him. Then Euryalus rushed up, but Patroclus struck him with a rock right on his head, smashing the entire skull inside his heavy helmet. Euryalus collapsed on the ground face down. Death, who destroys men's hearts, flowed all around Patroclus as he slaughtered Eremus, Amphoterus, Epaltes, Ptolemy, son of Damastor, Achaeus, Pyrrhus, Ippus, and Polymelus, son of Argeus. All these Patroclus laid out one by one on the earth, which nourishes all men. Sarpedon moves out against Patroclus and is killed. The Achaeans charge on against the Trojans, retreating back towards the city with Patroclus in pursuit. At that point, Achaea's sons would have captured Troy and its high gates at Patroclus's hands as he raged with his frenzied spear. But for